entrepreneurs remain shadowed. Here, I team up with these hidden talents to unveil their challenges and successes. Dive in with me to unearth entrepreneurial gems, learn from our experiences, and get educated. But yeah, hi. Welcome, everybody. This is the start of our podcast. We're just talking about how unprepared we were. But
we're the pros.
How did that kit
unprepared.
come? So the kit came and they thought it was like CIA spyware.
Yeah, the delivery guy was like,
Right.
what did he say it was? Is this military spyware?
Oh my God,
It was
that's
like
funny.
big black box.
Yeah, but how was it for setting up? Was it good? Like easy?
Yeah,
and-
everything's great.
Okay,
Everything's great.
I love it. Yeah, awesome. Well, I mean, listen.
Yeah, we use the same equipment, so it was perfect. And I'm surrounded by boxes, and I was like, I don't even know where I have my computer still, but I don't like my microphone's in another box, and like everything, my spotlight's in another box, my ring light, like, so everything's packed up everywhere. We're leaving in a week.
So I thought, like, when we kind of set this up and you were talking to Tennille about having this conversation, I only jumped in for like 2 minutes because I'm like, I feel like I've got a fucking torch under my ass constantly right now with everything we have going on. So it's like, it's really nuts. But I thought you would, I left that conversation with the impression, I'm kind of thinking of going to Hawaii, not sure. And I don't know where that was at the stage, but then when I saw Kim, at the horse show, she's like, oh yeah, no, she's like packing up and going. I'm like, what? So did it happen that fast?
Yeah. It was like 3 weeks ago. I was, I've been sick for the last 2 months, right? Like I haven't been sick in years, and I'm making up for it in 2 months. But yeah, I just realized the doctor's finally told me, if you do not rest, if you do not stop talking, because I voice to text with my wrist, right? I voice to text everything. And he's like, if you do not stop talking for the next 10 days, he's like, you're going to have some serious issues. And I was having breathing issues, and like the inflammation was getting bad. And so I was like 10 days of no talking and no, I can't, really type too much. And he wants me to just rest in bed. And I'm like, what am I going to do? I meditated, and I sat and thought, like, okay, some things must be, this is the universe, like my psyche. I'm a big believer in like neuroscience manifestation. So this is my head. Something's not in alignment with where I want to be. And I started thinking about it. I was like, you know what? It's time to go again. It's time to travel. It's time to move and, uproot. And we've been here in Carlsbad for about almost 3 years now. But like my son is a little nomad like me. He's always like, Mom, can I go to another school next year? Like he's not really tied to anything. He's very much my spirit. And he loved like living in the UK for a year and hopping all over like England, Ireland, Scotland. And so now he was like, well, where are we going to go? And I was like, well, you know what? There's a few places I'd like to show you in Mexico, because I used to live in Puerto Vallarta for a very long time, and Cabo. And so I was like, we can go do that. We can go see Mima and her beach house in Baja. And then we can go to Costa Rica, because he hasn't been there since he was a little kid. And then I was like, Uncle Justin Justin Mendenhall. He just moved to Hawaii, and he was been begging me to come. And I was like, you know what, let's go take a look and see if we want to stay there next time, like for a while. So we're going to travel a little bit, and then we'll land in Hawaii and see if we want to stay.
Okay.
But yeah, I just started 3 weeks ago. I started posting everything online to give everything away. And I've had people coming to my house and just taking stuff. I'm like, yep, here you go for free. Like, just take it.
You're giving your whole house away for free.
Yeah.
You're unbelievable.
I'm packing up the antiques, like, and the things that like I have a huge art collection. I have a really amazing art collection. So those things are staying with me. A few things I gifted to some of my students that were local. My like, I have, king bed sets and like guest rooms and stuff. And those are going to some of my students. And then everything else is just getting donated. It's just going to be, and I had somebody the other day came, and like, it was the most beautiful thing. I posted a box of toys, and when he showed up, I had like tons of toys. I had like 5 boxes of huge boxes of toys. And he showed up and he said, he said, my kids are so sweet. They only wanted one toy out of that box. And I was like, well, now you're going to go home with a whole boatload of boxes, like all these toys. He's like, it's like Christmas. And he started crying. And I was like, well, are you okay? And he said, well, they're not really my kids. He said, I adopted them because my sister passed away last year from colon cancer. Oh my God. And I'm going to cry again. I teared up so fast, but he was just crying, tears rolling.
That brings tears
to my eyes. And he said, you know what the beautiful gift in this is? He says, it's not that you're giving me all these toys. It's not the toys. He's like, it's the fact that this child, your son, spent time going through his toys and thinking there's other kids that could use these things, and I don't need them anymore. There's a detachment there, and it's okay to give them away. And he's like, I promise you, when the time comes, I will do the same.
Wow, that's beautiful.
I'll make sure that these move on and that my kids see that same example. And I was like, oh, like that's it. It hit me so hard. I sat and thought about it and I was like, that's legacy. That's legacy is when you pass that mission on and that purpose on and that generosity, that energy. That's legacy. That's what life is really about.
And it shows up in even the smallest things. And I think, it's funny that you bring this topic up, and and it's weird that we just pressed record, but it's great. I want the audience to hear this because we just finished two podcasts, one with Jessica Jensen and the other one with Emily, who suffered addiction. And so the but both of the themes of those conversations were like, Jessica talks about joy. She lost her son, who died of an autoimmune disease, and her whole conversation was about joyfulness and finding joyfulness, and even in the smallest things. And then, but even we were talking about with Emily as she was going through and her sobriety, and being, her message was so powerful. And even just this message that you talk about, there's these things that happen in our every single day lives that we either miss because we're too busy or we're too dialed in on the phone, or um, we don't just stop to take the joy out of it. And I just think it's been such a theme, really massive theme for the last month, um, of really compelling myself, and therefore my message to everybody else is just to really, like, through your day, take a minute and just take an extra second, 2 seconds, 5 seconds, to pat somebody on the shoulder or smile at them and say hello, even if they're a stranger. They're not going to bite you. They're not going to put a gun in your face. Just be kind, be loving in every kind of possible opportunity. And, for you, I mean, obviously you don't need the money. So, but as long as I have known you, I mean, when we first met, you were traveling all over the world, and we were traveling with you on many, not as much as you, but we were traveling with you. And every time you left a place, like, you'd go in, you'd buy something, and then you gave it away to the less fortunate, like your clothes or whatever you were utilizing. And so you've always been like that. And I think you're a great example of somebody who lives in that level of compassion for others, and also is kick-ass at making a ton of money. So, and I say that because,
Cheers
guys,
to that.
welcome to the podcast, because we've had two amazing guests, but they've been way off the business realm. Like, well, I say that that's not true. People would think that they're out of the business realm, but if they're tuned in and paying attention to the message of this theme of this podcast, is that business is a series of relationships, whether it's a relationship with yourself, your employees, the people in your community around you that are your customers. Like, this is how do you add value to everybody's life, and having an understanding, awareness, and appreciation of how people connect and feel and what they need is so critical. So, I was having you on the podcast so that we could just jump into some business stuff. So people who are like, for the business person that's in their mind, I do want to deliver some content. But this is a beautiful message, and thank you for sharing it, because it is I love actually how the universe works. It's like this extension of where we have been on the podcast for the last month, basically, especially celebrating International Women's Day, which turned into like 6 or 8 weeks for us here, because we've just had a bunch of women, who have just owned themselves in that area and have had accomplishments and overcome adversity, and so you're an extension of that, and so I appreciate you being here. I actually will take this as an opportunity. Guys, thanks for listening so far. You've probably been like, what the hell are these guys talking about? So I have Jeni Hott on the podcast here. And actually Heather, our producer, is, if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll be able to see Heather, and she's like, now she's probably like, I can't believe you're putting me on this fucking thing. So sorry, kiddo. But Jenny's a dear friend. She's probably one of the most brilliant people I know, hence her nickname, Brilliant Jenny. I, I mean, I love you, kiddo. Like really, really, truly love you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you did not see the first podcast, this is back in like 2023, November of 2023. We had Jeni on the podcast. You should go back and listen to it because everything she has to say is of extreme value. But Jeni was the first blogger to make a seven-figure income. She basically cracked the code, the Google algorithm code, to the point where Google brought her in and went, "What are you doing? And how are you doing this?" And she has been, well, one of the top 1% of the highest earners in internet. I don't know what the exact word is, but the internet marketing globally, I suppose. And like she is like she's a serial entrepreneur, so she's eating her own cooking every day. She's not just trying to sell stuff online. Like she has great value add programs for you to build an online business. And that's what we mostly talked about in our last podcast. But today we're going to talk about some other things, and stay tuned for that. But I just wanted to give you a run up of Jeni. Um, I mean, she's brilliant. And actually, speaking of this, the last conversation, I want to clarify something because it's been on my mind literally for a year. It is like, do do you have your doctorate in naturopathic medicine?
Yeah, yeah, I'm an ND by education only. I've never practiced. I was a
Yeah.
nurse before that. I thought when I started my first online business, it was to pay for school books, for college books. And I just turned out to be really, really, really good at it. And so I stuck to it. But I still go back to school. I just did a year of golf at UNLV. Like,
You're like, when you dropped that, I kind of went, oh, I think I made a comment like, oh, of course you do. But then I was like, it really kind of hit me. And when I say literally, it's been on my mind, it has been on my mind because I'm like, I got to clarify this because who just happens to have, oh, yeah, I do all this stuff. And I happen to have my doctorate in naturopathic medicine. So, anyways, in my part time, I became a doctor. Oh man, I have trouble reading a book, and so anyways, like I said, I mean, love you, but I love your passion for people and your vision for creation. And welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being here and taking the time because you've been sick for like 2 months like you said earlier, and we had actually had to postpone this, guys. So she's pushing it out here for us. So thank you.
thank you
Welcome,
for having me.
welcome.
You know, what's interesting is I had someone here, it was just yesterday, and she was telling me, asking me about some online business things, and she was saying, like, I she said, I know you're probably more about like the systems and all this because you're known for not working, for taking off up to a year at a time. And I said, actually, most of what I teach is mindset. So it is like about what we've been talking about. That to me is it's all tied together. It's like a really successful entrepreneur has mastered the mindset. You know this. Like we were just talking about, you're about to cross 1 million downloads for this podcast, which is absolutely extraordinary. And
Thanks.
you said, I think about it for a nanosecond and I'm over it. That's the sign of a seasoned entrepreneur, right? But when there's somebody that's new coming in, that's scary for them. Most of the time, that's scary for them. Something like that. So, like a lot of what I do is talking about the mindset, the energy, like all of these things, and having your heart in the right place and being instinct driven, right? Rather than focusing on like mastering the social media algorithms, all of that, it's really more about mastering your mindset. It's mastering your instincts, right? So it's all tied together. So everything you're talking about, it's like to me, it's all business. It's all business.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. It's like I'll say this. Thank you to the listeners and to the guests, like for supporting me because we don't monetize this podcast, as I've said a million times, and every time I say it, I say I should stop saying that. But I don't think about the downloads. What I think about, so to your point about mindset, is I don't think about the downloads. That's not, to me. It's not, and I never actually think. I never think about the money. I think about, in my mindset, it's always about the value. Like, how do we just produce more value for people? Like, how do I don't monetize it because if I had to monetize it, I'd have to have advertising. If I have advertising, then it breaks up the conversation. And for me, as a listener to podcasts, and I do listen to podcasts, I have some favorites, but that I kind of bounce between. But when all of a sudden they jump in, like, and you get this long advertisement, and it just kind of to me it detracts from the value and the message. And so that's why I guess I don't think about the downloads, because I'm not, I just feel like if I produce enough value, I have the right people on, I'm, you know, working on the right messages and kind of in touch where people may struggle, whether it's in their life or in their business or their personal life. Um, then it's like, yeah, we, if we're doing that, then whatever success, and to me the success is not on the downloads, the success is making an impact to change people's lives and make their life better. It has like, the downloads is just a side effect of what you really are trying to drive to do. And I think sometimes, when you get into your mindset piece, so I'll just throw this back at you, is like, when people struggle with this. I find it, when I have struggled with this in the past, I won't say about other people. For me, when I've struggled in the past, it's because I've fallen into a scarcity mindset rather than abundant mindset. And so, it's like, you get that feeling of desperation, or sales are dropping and I've got to do this and I've got to do that. And then you get into your head, and then it's like head goes to strategy and tactic. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't be there sometimes. If you stay up in the high end foo land, you're gonna like drive yourself off a fucking cliff. But so, because I think strategy and tactics are important. But yeah, I think you're right. Like,
I think you're right. That's the mindset that I teach, is you've got to let the money go, like let the thought of it go, and you focus on the value. You focus on the other things too, but on your own identity and building your instincts and all of the other things. But the money and the sales, you've got to hold them like a baby bird,
mhm.
it's got to be feather light, and you've got to be okay with saying no. For me, that's been a big piece. I'm very quick to say no. Everybody in the marketing industry and the online marketing industry knows Jeni Hott doesn't do JVs. Well, there's a reason for that. It's because that's a lot of work. It's a lot of energy. I have no problem somebody coming to me and saying, "We're going to make millions of dollars if you do this with me," and I will say no, because to me, I know it's not in alignment for me.
Where do you find people, like in your experience with dealing with people? Um, where do you find that they struggle to get beyond, where are they stuck in the mindset, and then where do they struggle with overcoming that struggle? Said
It
that right.
happens in different eras of the business. So most of my students are early entrepreneurs. So they usually go through it in the first 2 to 5 years. It's pretty heavy. Um, but it happens at different stages, right? So usually, like if I see an entrepreneur that says I'm 10 years in, I know that they're still figuring things out. I know that they're still really new. They're still pretty green, right? I've been doing this for 28 years and I've been there. I know, you can still have a ton of success. You can still be making millions of dollars, but I still know that you're still not 100% certain on what you're doing. You're still testing things out. You're still finding the shoes that fit you right. You're still finding, you're still coming into your own, right? So there's different stages though of your business. You know this. Like when you're going through a business, it's not just, you start and get some traction and it keeps going up and keeps going up. No, it's this and this and this and this, right? And then maybe it's sometimes down and then it's a journey. And so there's different eras of businesses, and the different business models even have different times when they'll go through those things. But usually it's like when I give them something that's going to be it's a major identity shift, right? So like for me, the biggest one was when I first realized, and it was Tony Robbins on stage calling me a leader. For the first time, I'd heard myself referred to as a leader, even though I was having millions of visits coming to my blog every month. I hadn't seen myself as a leader yet. And when I heard him call me a leader and talking about me on stage, my jaw dropped. And I was like, whoa, it hit me so hard. And I did go through a stage of like, I don't know if I'm, like, my first thought was, thank goodness I have a good heart and my intentions are good. Like you said, like I was never focused on the money, right? Which makes it a lot easier. But going through that identity shift, that's definitely one that you have to grow and start to adapt and be comfortable with that situation, with that whole new era of your business and of yourself, right?
Can you just explain? I'm curious to know what you went through, like in that identification of a leader, because I think it's kind of, I think it'd be significant for the listener, because you know many people who listen to this podcast or are in business, they have this transformation that you're talking about, and they go from solopreneur to, two or three people to, and then their business starts to grow. And then all of a sudden they get sprung into this position where they are a leader, but they can be a leader regardless as a solopreneur, as well, because we're all leaders at some, if you have kids, if you have friends, if you have people in around your circle, turns out you're a leader. And so I'm curious on your experience with that. Why was that so significant for you?
I think because one, it really hit me the impact of it. And I am a very deep thinker when it comes to online entrepreneurship. It's pretty much everything. But I will sit and I will think about this. And I thought about that means I'm influencing on a whole different level. Not just that, but there's expectations that come with being a leader, right? People have an expectation, and then you feel like you have to live up to something. You have to deliver. You have to set a good example. Like there's all these other things that set in that I didn't think about before. Where before it was like, I'm just giving, I'm just sharing, I'm just, doing my thing. And then all of a sudden it was like, whoa, I'm a leader. And there's 2 to 3 million people coming to my blog a month. And they have I better be really on top of my game and setting a good example and making sure I don't trip up. And like all of a sudden there's all this, I don't want to call it mind drama, but it's kind of mind drama, right? Where you're like questioning everything, and it is a definite identity shift. And it took me a good while to really be okay with it. To not be, I went through a shy stage. I kind of backed off a little bit. I didn't post quite as often. I was changed my voice a little bit. There's all these little steps that you go through. And then you get to a point where you're like, no, I've got this. And it's most of the time it's too, it's there's an outer validation that comes where people are, just saying like, oh my goodness, thank you so much. You changed my life. Like now I get this from my students all the time where they'll tell me, you're not just changing my, helping me grow a business. You're changing my life. You've changed who I am. I'm not the same person I was a year ago because of you. Like those kind of things come in. But then you also, when you sit and realize that that was not something you were trying to do, it was something that happened because of who you are and because of those intentions that you have naturally, that's powerful. And when you start to own that and you start to realize like that I'm changing their lives because of who I am, and you start to accept that identity, everything becomes so much easier.
Mm,
And you start to let go and you realize I don't have to be on the spotlight or like show up differently because I'm in the spotlight. I don't have to shy away from the spotlight. I don't have to worry about their expectations. And yeah, there's going to be people that don't I don't want to say don't like you, but you're not for them, right? That's okay. And you come to a point where those that fades away so much it doesn't even matter, right? But you just come to a point where you're just comfortable with it all and it becomes part of you and just becomes easy.
but with this, what about people who are struggling with it? Like, what advice would you have, or what distinctions have you learned through your own experience or watching other people go through it to help them get over the hump, if you will? Like, what would be the one or two pieces that you would offer up?
The first thing I always say is that any negative thought you have, any doubt that you have to come to a point where you realize that, and you can shortcut this and immediately know that those are not true. Any negative thought, any doubt, you know, any um any negative belief or like the limiting beliefs, anything like that, if it doesn't feel good, it's because it's not true. And most of the time, it's your brain. This is a neuroscience thing, right? But it's your brain keeping you comfortable, it's keeping you safe. It's doing its job. It's doing a fantastic job of keeping you in your comfort zone. So it creates these little doubts. It creates these little, thoughts of like, and you've heard like Tony Robbins says this all the time, right? Like, it doesn't matter who you are. You're always going to have those tiny little doubts of thinking like I'm not enough, or in some sense, it's a little more subtle than that. But he told me this personally, that he said that I don't care if it's me, I don't care if it's Oprah, I don't care who it is. There's still a sense inside that just says you're not enough, you're not doing enough. So it makes you drive to do more. Some people it just doesn't has them do more. Some people it makes them shrink, right?
Some people
But
get depressed from it, or
yeah, though
struggle emotionally or mentally.
some people go into a spiral from it. But yeah, but that's my first instinct now, and there's a process that you can go through to get to here. And like there's people like Marie Hayes and like is it Marie Hayes? Oh my gosh, where's my head? Um, but they'll talk about the process of like doing the work. She's got an app out that's amazing that you do the work where you actually write it out. And then there's like um, Hale Dwoskin on you can find him on YouTube. He has a process called Sedona method, absolutely extraordinary, but it's a releasing process. But you can go through those processes, but eventually, if you hone it and you really build this skill, you'll just know that every time, here's the shortcut. You don't have to sit and do the meditation. You don't have to sit and do the process. You just get to an instinctive point where you're like, okay, that's a negative thought. I know it's BS.
Mm, yeah.
And you just go on with your life,
That's
right?
the end game, right? But getting to that game is like it's difficult. I mean, I had a conversation earlier with a friend of ours earlier today, actually, about how she went on an ayahuasca journey, and she said like it deleveraged that ego, and that and inside of ego is fear. Because the ego is, even it can be driven from fear, or it can be driven from, significance. But um, that's interesting. Sorry, who is Sedona method? Hale. I didn't catch the last name.
Dwoskin. He was in the second Secret movie. And actually, one of our platinum partner friends introduced me to him, which is Tina Park. But
Oh, Tina.
yeah,
I haven't
she
seen her
introduced me to
forever.
him. I went to his retreat, and he invited me to come back. And it's amazing, but he just has you ask three questions, and he teaches you the whole process of it. But basics of it is, you ask yourself is, could I let this go? Would I let this go? When? And it doesn't matter if you say yes or no. That's the cool thing about it. You can say, "No, I'm so pissed right now. I don't wanna let it go. I'm so furious." Like, it could be something like that. It could be like, "No, I'm in this, deep sense of, angst right now. I don't wanna let it go." It doesn't matter if you say yes or no. But just the fact that you're focusing on it, and the way that he explains this is really amazing. He says, like, emotions are meant to be felt like clouds passing in the sky. And most people, they see the clouds, it's like maybe it's anger, maybe it's fear, maybe it's pain. They see the cloud and they think, no, I'm not gonna think about it right now. I'm gonna do something else. Or and they suppress, right? They suppress, they go do something else that's not going to help you to get through that. They focus on something else, and they just hold on to it. And he's like, you're just meant to observe it. Let the emotions pass. So if you sit, instead of, talking yourself out of it, I should do this, I should do that, I shouldn't be feeling this, I know I shouldn't be feeling this way. Instead, you just say, you acknowledge it and say, I'm feeling pain right now. I'm feeling really upset about X, Y, and Z. And you focus on it instead of talking yourself out of it or kicking yourself for feeling bad. You focus on it and you sit there and think. And you said, like, for me, I just sit down and I will sit with it. I always say I sit with it, but I sit for like 10 minutes and I'll think about it. I'll be like, you know what? I'm really upset about this, or this part's really, really, upsetting, or this is really painful. And I'll really think about the details of it. And before you know it, it does start to let go. And it's counterintuitive, right? Because you
Mm,
think that if you focus on it, it's going to make it worse.
right.
But it's not the case. So when you start to think about it, pretty soon you realize it feels a little bit better. And it is like watching the clouds passing in the sky. So as they go, they get a little bit less, and before you know it, they're gone. And it doesn't mean that it won't come back. It might come back. This happens a lot in business too, so I teach a lot of this, where, if they get upset, they have a troll. This is a very common one. If they get a troll on social media, and to me, if I see a negative one, I just instantly block and I move on with my life. Like, it's not a big deal, right? Um, but for my students, if they're brand new and they get somebody that said something mean about their post, or, slam them or something, for them it's deeply upsetting. It's almost wounding, and they come in and I'm like, it's okay. It's okay. I'm like, just sit down for a minute and think about this. This person just slammed you for this. I'm really upset about this. This is really painful. It hurts. I can't believe they do this. You can even write it if you want to, right? People journal and that's how you get it out. It's the same thing as watching the clouds go by. But you sit there and focus on it, and before you know it, it doesn't matter. And the next time it happens, it's faster. And the next time it happens, it's faster. Before you know it, it doesn't matter at all. You don't even really notice those kind of messages. If I see something like that, which I don't get it very often, but if I see something like that, it doesn't even phase me. Like, I don't even feel it. It just, you get to a point where you're like, eh.
Yeah, and
Sounds like you're having a bad day. I'm sorry that you're having a bad day.
a lot of people, sometimes people frame that as thick-skinned, but I don't know if it's necessarily thick-skinned, or just you've seen it so often that you're just used to it. Like you say, you just have this, you've built this muscle.
Yeah.
It's funny the
Well,
whole
and I know
time.
it's not about me, right? It's not about you. It's about them. Whatever their take is, maybe they're having a bad day, maybe they just needed to let something out, but it has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with you.
There's one thing that I just want to circle back on, because I think it's important, and we have kind of touched on it on the podcast, but it's worth probably circling back on. But your whole point about, and with with what Hale talks about, which is, be the observer. You had said, one of the tools that I've used is the Waking Up app with Sam Harris for meditation, and he often refers to, see that he'll say, see the seer, look at the one who is looking, um, and 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 that is, and he taught, and that's exactly kind of his framework is like, yep, see it and watch it go by, and then see yourself seeing it and watching it go by. So it almost pulls you out as a third party, and it's been super powerful for me as a tool to be able to, look at what is looking. Because when you look at what is looking, you are now not the one looking. You are looking at the looker, seeing the emotion go by like a cloud. And it's like, and that is like been so helpful for me, um, to, because I live in such a, uh, I put myself in because I like it. Like it's like I say to people like I'm busy, but I don't really know my difference between my work and my play. It's just, I love both like equally. I mean, to be playing in business or being, if I'm playing a game of golf or something, or wake surfing or whatever, it's like I get the same emotion from both. So it's like I'm in this, I feel like I'm in this perfect place of being able to do, whatever I like whenever I like, and I happen to really like what I do, and I get to do it with my wife, so it's great. But it can be really stressful, and so you've got to develop, some strategies around being able to handle that. So thanks for sharing that about Hale. Not at all anything I thought we were going to be talking about today. but but to your point about it, it affecting your students, like, so I do actually want to ask you, there are some things that I did have that I wanted to have conversations about, because I feel like entrepreneurs, business owners, startups, um, I think we've had conversations. I had Mark Bradley on the on the podcast a while ago. We talked about, buying existing businesses, the opportunity for people to buy existing businesses, that we're, the baby boomers are getting older. They're looking to sell, get rid of, partner, whatever, because we're moving into this very uncertain time, which lends to your kind of comments about, mindset. These people that, run successful businesses, and they get to this point where they grow, but then, marketing and sales and strategy is all changing. Everything is changing right now, and it's changing at such a rapid pace. Everything is changing and nothing is changing, because I think the symptoms are like the processes are not that much different, but there's this scary thing out here from a mindset perspective of, what's happening with technology. And so I'd love to just have a conversation. I wanted to get somebody on the podcast that I just felt could just like was in it, and not just kind of like a tech person, but it was actually implementing an understanding of the tech, that we could maybe have an open conversation about, whether it's AI and what is happening in AI. And last time you were on, we kind of touched on it for a few minutes, but nothing massive. But ChatGPT, what's happening in digital marketing, like what people can do to, seize opportunities, um, and reduce their angst and their fearfulness or their mindset around this topic. So I don't know if that was kind of why I was like, I got to get Jeni on, because I feel like you're that person that just is, you're eating your own cooking, and you have your thumb on the pulse of this, and was hoping maybe we can have a conversation for people.
Absolutely, absolutely. I teach a lot of AI. I know, and I see a lot of people come in, especially my students. Will come in, and some of them are afraid of AI. They're afraid of the technology, but the way that I see it is like that's one thing in history you've never been able to just slow down or stop is technology. So the sooner you can embrace it, the better. But I also see a lot of it are people are thinking like, oh, we're going to become like AI slaves and all of this. And like the way that I see it, and you talk about like I look at the landscape of it all, right? It's been actually now over 20 years, almost 29 years that I've been an online entrepreneur. 29 years, I have seen it from the start, from the AOL days of dial up when I first had my first business, all the way through like the dawn of social media, through so many different things. One thing I've learned very quickly is that everything is actually like the core principles are still the same. Now all we've done is made it more complicated. But like everybody's so worried about like the algorithm hacks and all this, and I'm like, it's all the same. Nothing has changed except that we've got more people in it, and that there's a lot of people that are kind of confused and trying to patch things together. But the core principles are always the same, and it's the same as when it was offline, right? When it's offline business, like I have the same basic principles that I apply to everything. Like one is like never jump on a trend and never jump to master a a strategy that's new, like from something that's developing that's new. Like we saw like Google coming out with what was it, circles. I think it's
Mm.
called circles, but like I've seen so many different things that came out, and people were putting tens of thousands of dollars into mastering their marketing for this specific, this specific opportunity. And I would just sit back because I would wait and see, is it going to last? And I look at things that way now. I also look at AI when I sit back and look at where it's coming. One, AI has been around for a lot longer than most people think. We were using it in blogging 15 years ago, and we just had post mixers and things like that. But right now, AI is still primitive. We're going to be able to do so much more with it very soon, very fast. But like it'll get to a point where we will have to only think of something and we'll be able to create it with AI. We won't have to type it. We won't have to, put the skills into doing it. It will be a thought process. And if you look at like if I don't know, some people don't really feel comfortable with the idea of singularity, but I do, and I think that's very much our future. Is for me, I see AI as a part of our evolution. We created it and it will become a part of our consciousness. So we will put it into our bodies. That's who we will become. And it's going to take a while. And I promise there's going to be some uproars. There's going to be political things about it, but that's the future. And it is the way it is. It's been for history, throughout history, for thousands of years as technology comes out. I don't care if it was the plow. It's like everything has people saying like, no, I don't want to use that, I don't want to embrace that. But that's the process, and we can battle it or we can embrace it, and we can start to learn how to use it and leverage it as much as possible, as soon as possible, not just for us but for our kids, for our future kids, for their kids, right? So the sooner that we can apply that and to understand that what you're learning with it now is just the foundation, and we're in a very primitive state of it. We're very primitive right now. This is like, I mean, a minute fraction of what we'll be able to do even a year from now. Like there's so much coming out. It's crazy. When you look at like what we're doing with health and with everything else, with business, it's extraordinary. But at the same time, like people are making it more complicated than I think it needs to be. You could just still apply the same principles, right?
So yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting that you say that because like when you were, I was thinking about it as you were talking about like never jump onto a trend, and then would you say never change for anything that's new or something like that? I think it was. And as you were saying it, in my head, I was like, yeah, pioneers get arrows, right? Like that's been the principle of there is that business concept of pioneers get arrows, and so like if you're the first person in, like you could take the bullet. So it's an interesting that you say that because it kind of falls into an old age adage of like this is, and that obviously saying has been around for forever. So but you said a couple things, and then it kind of drew me that just to. So you made a comment about AI has been around forever. We used to post mix it, I think, is what you said, and then you talked about singularity, and then you talked about it in being in our bodies, and I'm thinking, holy shit! Like the average person is just about to ready to lose their mind. They don't know what they're what the hell are they talking about? I'm not going to be able to follow this conversation. So I wonder if maybe like, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but can you just for the listener really just lay down the fabric of what is, because everybody uses the term AI, and obviously everybody knows it stands for artificial intelligence, but it's like, well, what the hell is artificial intelligence? Like and can you just maybe give the layperson example or explanation of like what is really happening in the background, um, for them to be able to utilize it? And it doesn't need to be but do you mind if, because,
For them to be able to utilize it.
well, just being, because if they understand it, I think a lot of people go, I can't, I don't understand what AI is, so I need to avoid it. And if we could just share with them like okay, in simple terms, this is what actually is happening in the background with AI. And they go, oh, oh man. Like, cause when it's been explained to me, it's like, oh, really? Okay. Well, that's just kind of, it just makes sense. It's like, oh, so this is, this file, this thing is going to look in this file, and and it's gathering this information, and it's presenting in this fashion, and and it's like, and then it just does it in nanoseconds. I just love your interpretation of what's happening.
The way I see it, it's the highest level of our own consciousness, of our own intelligence that has all been put into a computer, right? And we can go and ask it whatever we'd like, whether it's want to go ask it the meaning of life and just explore philosophies and things like that, or if you want to go and ask it. I just made a post. I joked and I said, my first question to AI was, "What's the meaning of life?" My most recent question was, do wool dryer balls really work?" Like, but that's what it is. It just works at such a lightning speed. And the truth is, it's just a magnification of our own brains, right? It's our own intelligence. We've created it. We've fed it. It's learned from us, right? So it's really just like talking to an extraordinarily intelligent, fast thinking individual.
Which are the large language models, right? Which from a practicality standpoint is large language models are really and correct me if I'm wrong, but they're a stack of information, if you will. And when I say stack, I'm like, that's really an under like it's a major under exaggeration, but it's like I'm just trying to relate it, where these large language models are just basically a stack of heap tons of information, where they go and access they AI goes to access information to be able to relate it back to you. And you can use tools like ChatGPT uh, for an interface to be able to communicate with um, with those large language models. Is that I just and I think that some people don't understand. We'll get into this more, but like that really it is that when it's like an interface where it's like I'm talking to you know I'm talking to these large language models, and I'm extracting as much information as I can. And it's like so powerful. Like we don't do anything. I don't do anything anymore without asking ChatGPT. Like it's crazy. And to the point where like um I when I get on ChatGPT, I'm like, I say, "Hey, good morning, lovely lady," and my staff like look at me and go, "When the first time I did it, I happened to do it out like," and they're like, "What the hell? You call your ChatGPT lovely lady?" I'm like, "Yeah, because if this shit becomes live one day,
Right?
I want her to appreciate me being nice and polite." And so
I start
it's
every
funny.
prompt with please.
Yeah, yeah, me too. Right? Hey, could you please? Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I do. Um, I don't know how you feel about like that's my total layman's interpretation of how I see ChatGPT, or which is just a tool, and there's a whole bunch more that are more specific, and we can always talk about those from a marketing perspective for people. But am I out in left
No,
field?
I think that's a brilliant way of
That's
putting it.
that's
Absolutely.
actually the opposite of brilliant. It's the low, like, because that's how I function,
It's
right? It's like
brilliantly simple. You put
yeah,
it very, very
yeah,
well. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, for people who are afraid, what are the steps for them to start to integrate and look at how they can put this into their business? Because if here's the downside, if they don't get on this train, they're going to be left behind. I mean, like it's like taking a shuttle to the moon, and that's the only place that's gonna, or I guess Mars, as Elon Musk is trying to do, right? It's like like if you're not on this train, you're the odds of you being successful in the future and keeping up is
You're gonna
impossible.
struggle.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Especially if you're in an online business. Ooh, if you don't embrace that quick, it does give you an advantage. I mean, there's always a way. I don't care what it is. If you really just do not want to do AI, there's always a way to still make it. I don't care. It doesn't matter what you want to do. I always think there's always a way. But embracing it and using that, leveraging it, there's so much opportunity there. There's so much power there, not just for like creating simple social posts, but for designing really out, like thinking outside of the box marketing plans and even helping with the mindset. I have one of my students actually created a custom GPT that's based on me. So she can ask me questions anytime.
Really?
And a few other students have been using it as well. And I think that's amazing. Like she, she doesn't want to wait until our next coaching call. She goes and asks her custom Jeni GPT, and it gives her. I looked at some of the responses, and I was like, "That is pretty close to what I would say." Like it was pretty impressive.
And that so just so people understand, like, and I don't think people understand this, but you can create your own chat GPT, right? I didn't know this until a little while ago. And so we're actually going to start working on creating a chat GPT from all the interviews that we've had on the podcast. We're going to dump all the content into a chat GPT model. And then anything, like, I have basically an encyclopedia on my computer of everything I've read. Like, when I read a book, I don't just read a book. I read a book, I highlight it, then it will go to my assistant or whatever. They take the notes, they type them out, and then it goes into a document. And so I have like,
Oh, amazing!
yeah,
That's brilliant.
like 20 years of 15 years of documents from different things I've read. And then I try to like review them as often as possible just to keep old ideas fresh in my head, because I do think that, you know, the, nothing is new, and everything is kind of new. Do you know what I mean? So we're gonna dump that encyclopedia, uh, um, and then I have like a whole bunch of content on how I've but look at buying a business and how we do the due diligence and how we can grow it and what the opportunities are. We're going to take that and we're going to dump that in as well. And so, yeah, yeah. But people don't know that. So like, you could create a company. Um, so maybe this is maybe a conversation we can have. So for the listeners, like, if you have a business, and I'm thinking about even some of the guests that I've had, it's like they go, most common problem with business people or entrepreneurs is that they have people coming to them and they are the resource for the entire company, whether the president, CEO, founder, whatever it is, whether they're, $10 million business or they're a $2 million business, they at some level are the neural, like the brain of the operation. And so if you can, you could create your own company chat GPT. This is a question, actually. It's not a statement, because I'm not 100% sure you could do this. So my question is can you create, if you're an entrepreneur, can you create, and then how would you create a chat GPT for your company, so that, like, your friend or your client who's like, well, I'm going to ask Jeni because I don't want to wait, that they can go in and they can ask, a chat GPT and get a pretty, 80% of the answer or close to it, to help them with their thinking. Because my experience has told me that oftentimes when people come to ask me the question, they have an answer, but they're uncertain about the answer that they have, or they're maybe certain about it, but they might be uncertain about what my response is going to be to that answer. And then, therefore, I now have become, whether it's because of my past reactions or because of their insecurities or because of the corporate culture or whatever it is, I now have become the roadblock ultimately to progress in the organization. And that happens so freaking often, that we become, whether it's, I mean, mindset, like you mentioned earlier, or strategy, or lack of lack of what's the word I'm thinking of, lack of access to the one who knows, um, that is what holds back a lot of organizations and the pace of their organizations. And then, therefore, once you get that ingrained, you then have a culture that develops over time, and then it just becomes systemic. So So sorry, that was a long statement for a question of, could a company go I'm going to use my example. My buddy, the one that's in my head right now, is a buddy of mine who was on the podcast. His name's Irfan, and he owns a company called EB Box, amazingly successful business. But I was just kind of thinking, I wonder if he has an AI for his business for people to go to so that they don't have to ask him, or not only him, but his clients, more importantly. Like if the clients could access, this chat GPT or this portal or this whatever it is. Okay, I'm going to flip it over to you and stop talking.
Absolutely. My instructional designer, she's absolutely brilliant. Her name is Kate Nash. If anybody needs an instructional designer, she's extraordinary.
Okay, what is that? What's an instructional
She
designer?
so it's somebody that helps you create courses or like quizzes, things like that. Most people don't realize that those things are very complicated. They're a lot harder than they than they think they are, right? To build a good one that people want to finish. She's amazing. So she's created like the instructional design projects for like Starbucks, and she's been doing it for over 20 years. She's just incredible. She actually put together a little mini course and she gives it away for free right now. I told her, maybe she should do it for like a really small amount to give to charity or something. But right now it's free and it's a little course on how to create a or custom GPT for you. But she put together one that implements my social media strategy, that creates a post in the right ratio, in with all of the little pieces that I use, and her custom GPT creates a new post for her every single day, and it
Oh,
just pops
really?
up and there's the post. Yeah, yeah. She just put my strategy in there and created the whole thing, and it's designed around her business. Yeah, but she's brilliant. So I can give you the link for that, and you can share it with your people. But it's really amazing.
And that's Kate Nash instruction, and that's called an. Do you say an instructional designer, an infrastructure instructional designer? See, I've never heard of that term. Okay, so
Most
right,
people haven't. They
yeah,
do the little courses on how to create a free course or something like that, but then, most people don't finish them because they're not really great, and they just get really like, for somebody like me, I'm like mad scientist when it comes to online business and marketing, right? So for me to gather my thoughts enough to put together like, it's hard. It really is. So she's been a godsend for me to be able to break down my instincts and be like, "Okay, why did you come to this decision on this point?" Or it just reminded me that you touched on this in this lesson, right here. I think we need to cover this part. Like, she picks up on all the little pieces and helps you break down everything so that it's a really incredible, pleasant learning experience for the people that take it.
and just so I have an understanding of this, because it would be somebody that I feel like this is something that we would do, and if we would do it, like other small business owners would do it as well. So, or medium-sized business owners that haven't had this. So she goes an instructional designer. So anybody, if they're like, okay, if they didn't, let's say, I mean, guys, Kate Nash is who Jeni trusts, and if Jeni trusts her, I trust her. So that would be a great recommendation, a great place to start. But if anybody was really looking at this and going, okay, what specifically is the reason to hire, the business case reason to hire an instructional designer?
Simplification, and they plug all the holes. So normally when somebody comes in and they just want to create a course, or create something even more like that, if you want to create a program, a full program, it's very easy, especially for an expert, to miss all of those really tiny details that we take for granted. So for me, like, if I tell someone how to start a business, I used to just sit down and somebody was like, "How do you do this? How do you create a business that's automated and makes seven figures and you don't have to work for a year?" And I would just tell them everything. I would just like fire hose. We do this, and then they would. I've had some people come away and be like, "You shared so much, but my head was spinning and I didn't know where to start." Somebody like Kate actually takes all of that and breaks it down and asks you the questions. Okay, this part needs to be clarified because your expert brain just went over all of these things, but this is not explained well enough, right? So she plugs all those holes and makes sure that everything is just flawless.
And then if you owned a business, let's say it's in manufacturing, or you owned a car dealer, whatever, a restaurant, what type of solutions would this give you that would either help you refine your operations, train your people, or interface more effectively with your customers?
All
How?
of that.
How though?
One, you just said creating trainings for them. Like,
Yeah.
if you can master this, and this is something that I teach in my Time Rich program, If you can master how to create an effective training, that takes so much off your plate. And you talk about, potentially being a roadblock for your business because everybody needs to come to you. If you have these set trainings that they can just be referred to, and not just they need to go and find it, but like each key person in that department, or your manager, whatever, even with your, like, if it's clients you're dealing with, like me with students, and you can drive them back to those trainings, and your team can drive them back to those trainings, it means that you don't have to sit there and explain everything again and again and again and again, right? If it's effective enough, it also creates this ripple effect where the things that you've taught, the culture is kind of trained in that sense. So, like, just to say, like, an example, if you have an online business and you have, a community of clients or students or whatever, customers, you can have those set up so that they can come back to those. It takes so much off your plate, off your customer service plate, right? Where that stuff is just available. For me, like, I have my students are they know that to come into our Facebook group and ask questions. Well, when they ask questions, I create a training on it. And sometimes it's only 2 minutes, sometimes it's 30 minutes. That training is captured into an FAQ vault. I don't have to answer the questions over and over and over again. Now my team can just say, here's the FAQ vault. Here's the lessons that you need to watch again, or the trainings you need to watch again. Here's where she really explains this. They can create curated lists that are ready to go. So if you have even like your team, let's say you onboard somebody new, you can have that series of trainings there. Nobody needs to walk them through absolutely everything, right? It just makes everything, it makes life so much easier. And we have this technology that we can do that now where we've never had that before, to a level we've never had it before.
Yeah, I mean, in the past, like, you'd have it written on a piece of paper in an operations manual somewhere, and or an SOP, um, where where and so for people, SOP is a standard operating procedure. Um, then they would have to look it up in a binder, or on a back in the old days, or then on a computer, where it's stored in some central filing, process system that everybody can access. That would be called an intranet, internal, like, internet, in an organization. But now you can really talk to ChatGPT and get that information and get those answers.
Now you can have a custom GPT that takes them right to the video wherever you have it hosted, and
Right.
that you could even simplify it to that point
Yeah.
where the GPT would walk them through it, send them to the actual video wherever you have it hosted. It could be that simple.
And then, so once you get this information, and I'm trying to really like slow this conversation down to the point where I'm finding myself even like, because my brain is like, wants to absorb this. And so I'm like, I can even feel myself right now speaking more slowly. So sorry guys. Um, this is how my crazy dumb brain works, but um, it's like, most business people go, and whether it's an online business or whether it's a bricks and mortar business. I mean, even if you're a bricks and mortar business, you're an online business because you're selling online. So I'm kind of making a statement. Do you agree with that? Yeah. So the problem that most people have, it's like, oh my God, like, I don't know how to do it. Like, they go, I don't know. And then they come up with all the reasons why that's too much. So I'm going to go back to where you said this earlier. I'm going to go back to where I feel comfortable, because your brain. And so this is, to your point, validating, like, it's actually come full circle, exactly what you said earlier, which is people's mindset. So, but then the question is in order for us to help people get through their mindset on this topic and look at their business and start to integrate a level of technology that is helpful and not hindering, because they look at it and they go, like, I got to operate, I got to work, I got to get this done. Well, okay, I'm the only person that can do this and I don't know how to do it. So I'll leave it till later. Who do they hire? What do they have to do? Where can they go to get the information that is going to help them through the thinking on implementing what is possible?
I look at it different stages of the business, right? And I usually break it into four. where you have the early, and then I have it all the way up to just killing it. I actually have this in a document, but the very beginning, I really think you only need about a VA, right? And that's usually someone that because you're really mapping things out for yourself before you're able to create to go to the next stage, where then you can have a manager, right? Which in online marketing we call it an OBM.
So
Um,
VA, sorry, so I'm gonna stop you through this so they can catch if you're okay with that. A VA, you mean virtual assistant, right? Yeah.
yes, in the
But
beginning, and I think most people, the sooner that you can hire a VA, the sooner that you have one, the better. The sooner that you can start to be comfortable in shifting to that identity of becoming a boss, the better. And it's usually before you think that you can afford it. It's usually before you think that you need it. It's usually before you think that you're ready for it. But the sooner that you hire one, the better, because it does take practice for a lot of people to be able to let go of some things that they don't need to be doing, to be getting rid of some of that busy work, right? And to be shifting into that dynamic of delegation, where you're in that
okay,
state of delegation.
I love this because I think everybody should have an assistant. And we have a virtual so guys, for those of you who don't have a virtual assistant or an assistant, but a virtual assistant is somebody that you can find on Upworks. Where would you resource them? This is the stuff I don't do. Tennille does all this stuff, so I don't. I'm being honest. Like I don't know the practical step by step way of going out and doing this. I know we do it. I just don't know how it gets done.
I have a connection with. I have to look and double check what the name is. It's a basically a VA academy that's taught by Mary Rose. Uh, Mary Rose. What is her last name? I can't think of it right now. I'll give you that link as well. She can put it in the description. But she has a VA academy where she places them after, but they are so well trained and so do such an amazing job. You can go through the companies that have in the Philippines, but personally, I haven't had great luck with those. In fact, I've had some that were downright oof scary.
Hmm.
Doesn't mean like you have to be really particular, and it takes time to train a good VA if you don't get one that's been trained correct. So you have to kind of be prepared for that as well. Um, Usually I go through that academy, and if you get a good one, like mine is absolutely extraordinary. She's amazing. I pay them anywhere between 20 and 25 an hour usually. I think I pay mine 26 an hour, being very transparent. That's what you can expect if you're going through something in the VA through Philippines. They're anywhere from $4 to $10 usually an hour. Um, but I'm very, very, very particular. I don't just accept someone that that somebody says this is the one. Try to find someone that can refer. Like if you already worked with them or they're their VA and they're looking for extra hours, you can go into Facebook groups and you can have a really good time there, finding some that people recommend, like other entrepreneurs recommend that they've already worked with them. That is a huge help. Other than that, you can go to Odesk or to one of those to look for something, to look for someone.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. I mean, yeah, and I mean, I think identifying that everybody should have a virtual assistant of some level. You know, you could have them for 5 hours a week, you could have them for 25 hours a week, or full time. You know, it doesn't have to be all. You don't have to hire somebody full time to do this. That's the beauty of this work. So thank you for that's a great tip. I wouldn't have thought about like just
Even if
and then you
they're
could
wanting to start one for 1 to 2 hours a week, it's amazing what they can do. And just the idea again of shifting into the identity of becoming a boss and being okay with delegation and then adding a little more time over time. That's a really good way to start as well.
and my hallucination is that you could find a virtual assistant who actually is specifically has experience in implementing AI into an organization or implementing technology into an organization.
Absolutely. There's actually VAs that specialize in AI or like in creating custom GPTs and things like that. You can even hire them as just project based. There's a lot of opportunity there.
Love it. Awesome. So that's stage one. Sorry.
Yeah. Then we move on to the next one where you can hire a few more people, where you can have like a social media manager. I have mine set up where it's an OBM, an online business manager. So it's kind of like next level VA, but they just oversee everything, right? They oversee everybody else. So I start to add little pieces of the team there, and then I have that person as the key point that everybody else goes to. So it's not much different than corporate, right? Where you have like a director. So you have your OBM, and then you can slowly add in others as well, where you have, a social media manager, maybe you have a sales, depending on your business model, maybe you have a sales manager, and then they all report to the OBM. This is the way I set it up so that I
Oh,
don't have to do any of the work myself, right?
no, no, no. Well, this is good.
Yeah.
This is what we need. This is what people need to know is they can. There are people out there that do this, and you do not have to be the one that knows. You just have to have the vision to be able to create it in your organization, and you have to have you have to be able to take a bit of a risk on the learning curve on finding people like dedicating some energy and time towards finding people who can help you through this process. I was a little shocked that you just said the sales manager would report to the online business manager.
They're kind of like, so this is just the way that I do it,
Yeah,
right?
no.
This is not necessarily everybody, but for me, I have she's my right hand, my OBM, my manager. She's my right hand. If I want to hire a sales manager, I tell her, go find me a sales manager. If I want to hire a social media manager, I tell her what I want. And she goes and does it, right? She also knows me. She knows me so well, knows my business, my philosophies, everything. So she knows what's going to be okay, what's not, right? That's your right hand. They manage everything.
Yeah, and is this a person who is this a $50,000 a year or 150,000 or
Totally depends. Usually it can be a VA that has been a VA and has kind of upscaled their skills. And other times it's someone, Mary Rose Speed. That's her name, Mary Rose Speed. She's the one that has the academy, the VA academy, and she actually does train OBMs as well. So that's a really great place to go. Um, but yeah, there's different levels, different ones. Like those are good ones to find on Odesk. You can go through Mary Rose Speed. There's just different ways to find them.
Mhm.
Yeah, but
That's
it's
ChatGPT, guys.
right.
Like, right? I mean, use the yeah. Okay. So online business manager. Great. I love that.
What is nice is you say this, it's kind of funny, but you actually can create a GPT that is your VA, and they will actually do the posting, the creating the social post or finding a VA for you. It's really fascinating, but we're into an era. It's a little more takes a little more work. It takes a little more skill to be able to do this, but you can create that GPT that does all the scheduling for you, does everything for you.
Okay, we're going to talk about that in a minute. That's the next thing we're going to talk about. But we're at number 2,
It's
so let's
still
hit.
not perfect, but that's
No,
where we're headed. That's where
right.
we're headed.
Yeah, and that's I think to you know be depending on your risk tolerance of being able to implement technology is going to be how much do you want to start investing, to your point very very early in this topic, which was you know um, uh, don't jump on a trend. Not that this is a trend, but it's new technology, and so if it's new technology, it's going to be bumpy, it's going to be difficult, it's going to change, and there's not a lot of people have done it, so it's not like you can go out on LinkedIn and say, hey, who can recommend so anyways, first, number one, the first stage is VA. Second was social media manager. No, sorry, online business manager. Sorry.
So let me
Yeah.
say this too: is for me personally, because I am focused only on passive income.
Hmm.
That my world revolves around passive income. I teach passive income, right? So for me, I will say this: I don't look at hiring a team as always being a good thing. I keep my team as lean as possible. When I was making seven figures with my very first like big blog, my team consisted of a developer that I rarely checked in with, that I talked to him, I paid him well, talked to him every few months, if that. Sometimes I'd go a year without talking to him. So it was only like but he kept an eye on things for me. Like if something crashed or whatever, he would fix it, right? But I mean, when I say lean, it's lean. And then I had a moderator for my forums, like a chief moderator, and I
Hmm.
had volunteers that reported to that chief moderator. That's it. That was my seven-figure team.
Wow.
And mind you, for most of that time, social media didn't really exist. So I didn't really have to have that. I will say a social media manager is key. These days, it's worth it to find one that is absolutely extraordinary and can take that off your plate, because otherwise it can drive you mad. Unless you're one of those people that is like one with social media. I am not that person. But I will say that's a key one. But other than that, I keep it as simple as possible. For me, every time you hire someone, that's someone else to manage. Every time you hire someone, that's someone else to culture train. Every time you hire someone, like that's something else. Like it's just more to more
100%.
responsibility.
Yep.
So for me, I keep it as lean as possible. So you only hire, just like strategy, you only hire what you need, what you absolutely need. Now, that said, some people will hear me say this and then they'll say, like, okay, well, I'm going to only hire one person. They're going to do everything. That's not good either, right? Because you do want somebody that could specialize and focus on their specific task versus someone that's spread thin and doing things that they can't really, that's not really their wheelhouse, right? So you really need to pay attention to your own business model. What is it that you need in this era of your business? That's another key point. What is it that you need in this era of your business? And then you go ahead and hire for that. So right now, if you're looking to scale and you're like, yes, I do need to expand on my social media, I want to add another platform, which I only add one at a time. I will hire someone that is key for that specific platform. And I will make sure that they are not spread thin and that I don't give them anything else. If they're my social media manager, they are not also helping with sales or moderating my Facebook group or anything like that. No, they're focused on what I would need them to do.
And by platforms, you mean LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. Um, what else would I be missing? Like, I don't.
The biggest ones, Facebook. I think Facebook is key for when you're starting out. I think it's amazing for most entrepreneurs. Instagram, love Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn. Those are the biggies,
Yeah. And
and
TikTok.
TikTok, of course. Yeah,
TikTok. Yeah.
yeah.
And then
For now, we'll
uh,
say for now because every one of them will fade. Every one of them
right,
will.
it'll be something else, X,
Yeah.
whatever. Like, yeah. So I did have a question about social media manager. I feel like if you don't know much about social media, if you're a business owner and you don't know much about social media, um, there are you could come across some pretty shitty social media managers. How would you vet? What would be like the top 5 questions you would ask to vet a social media manager?
Oh, that is a good question. Well, first, I'm going to look at their work. I'm going to look at their own feeds and see what they're looking at. I don't necessarily need to see numbers on their specific feed. That's a big one because a lot of people will think, well, I went there and they only had a few thousand. Well, their not job is not to market themselves and they're not marketing a business, really, not necessarily, right? But I will look at the quality and the vibe that they have and see if it fits my vibe. And then I will ask to see some of their other clients, maybe their feeds, and see what I feel there. I go by instinct again. So I'm going to look at that and see what the vibe is and see if they can encompass what I'm going for. I also look to see, and this is a big one, is I ask them about their past experiences with their clients. If they start, and I let them tell me stories, right? But if they're coming to me and they're telling me like, well, I had this problem with this one client, and they start really going into the negative stuff, and they're like, had, if there's just red flags, I really watch for those, and I avoid that like the plague, because most people are like, no, that was just that situation, or that was they'll be fine. That's not something you want to take lightly. So I very much look at that to avoid more work for me in the future, more stress for me in the future, things like that. Another one, let's see. Again, I don't really care about how long they've been doing it because there's some people that coming out of high school that are naturals at it, right? They've just kind of grown with it because they were around, at the dawn of TikTok or whatever. So I don't really look at that, and that's a big one because a lot of people ask me, "Well, how many years experience do you think they should have?" I don't care about years of experience. I care about what they can bring to the table.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, sometimes
I
being old, like long in the tooth on this kind of stuff, you stay in old habits, and technology wraps so fast that it is sometimes better to have somebody newer. Actually, isn't it? That's my understanding. That's what I've heard.
I also look for someone that doesn't need a lot of hand holding. That's a big one for me. If someone, and I've had that experience where people were like, well, I wasn't sure what to do, so I didn't do anything. And that to me, because again, I'm focused on passive income, I don't want to micromanage. I am not a micromanager. I want to know that everything's going to be done, that my OBM can, oversee things and make sure that everything's going well. But I don't want to have to say, you have to do this, you need to do this, or like just constantly check in and handhold. That is not me. So I need someone that really can take direction and be like, you know what? I thought we could try this. What do you think about these? I want someone that's innovative. I want someone that thinks outside of the box. And I want someone that really pays attention to what my what my brand is and can really run with that. and can really like make it shine even bigger than what I imagine, right? If they can outthink me when it comes to that things, I see that as a good thing. So if they can make me look even more amazing than I can even imagine, that's something that I look for too.
Mm. What metrics would you measure these people by to make sure that you're making progress? And the reason why, because as you were just talking there, I mean, I think like super smart. Like this is, all, when I asked the question, I'm like, how would you vet this person? But it's like really, you're interviewing them, and like, how would you hire somebody that works, that you were looking to do a sales job or whatever. But um, we, this is so quick story. Friend of ours at the house, general conversation. I asked for a little bit of coaching on marketing and spending. It actually came from a completely different question, but we ended up there. Obviously, there was a business problem, and we kind of just dialed it down through asking some questions and found out that there was a problem, a big spend in marketing that was affecting the bottom line. And they were spending like 10 or 12 grand a month in marketing, and there was no gain in leads, and they were just spending. And Tennille is our guru, competent person. She would hate me if I called her a guru, but she really knows her shit when it comes to this. And because of talking to people like you, and she just is a sponge. But and she's an avid researcher and learner. But she sat down with him and just like found out what he was doing, and then she's like, "Holy smokes! Like this, no, you need to go back." And she gave him some tips. Um, and I think he got down to spending like $2,000 a month, and he was getting triple the results on social media, like triple the leads and the flow and whatever the clicks, Google, I don't know what the hell they're called, but my
CTAs and ROIs.
well, yeah, I don't, no clue. Um, but if you're a layperson and you don't know much about social media, which I put myself in that category, and I depend on my wife because she's way smarter than I am. But how would people measure the metrics? What would they look for to know that, you know, because I always say in marketing, it's like, it's the land of fluff. Like, they just keep spending, and it's like, sometimes you don't even know if it's, you know, they always say like, oh, well, you're getting more clicks, or you're getting more hits, or you're getting more whatever it is. And it's like, yeah, but the phone's not ringing, and we're not bringing, dollars into the business. So why am I spending all this money? So I don't know if you could address that.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so if it's social media, I look at it this way. Again, you have different areas of your business. So most people come in and they're thinking like, okay, I need to be growing and I need to be selling everything all at once, and that's not always the case. So if you're just starting out, you're really in a growth era, right? More than a sales era, like more than when you're looking to scale. So if you're in the growth era, what I look for is more of saves and shares. Likes are great, but to be honest, likes don't really do anything, right? So if you really think about, I go deep with this too, and I won't drag everybody into this right now, but when you really think about what happens as a result of those likes, what is a result of the shares, of the results of the saves, it really comes down to the shares and the saves that are more important, because that's a signal of trust. That's a signal of, wow, that's a deep belief in me and liking what I'm doing here, right? The end metric is always going to be, is it bringing conversions? But if you're in a state where you're just new, you're not really aiming for conversions, you're aiming for growth, right? You're aiming to build a following and to build that foundation so that you can scale and so that you can focus on sales soon. It doesn't mean that I'm not saying you're not going to get them in the beginning, but in the beginning, if you're really early in, or even if you just decided, I'm going to launch something new. Before I do a new launch, before I come out with a new product, like I have a new one coming out now, it's called Rich Fun Life. I'm in a more of a stage of building a foundation for that, rather than getting more sales for time rich. So whatever your goal is for that era of your business, that's going to change what you're looking for, and even the ratios of the kind of posts that you're going to be posting at that time. And I know, like, I get a little bit
No, no,
mad
no.
scientist in this, but I have different types of posts and different ratios of those posts for each type of, of results I want in that era. So like if I know that right now I have a launch coming up soon, I'm going to post um, more value posts and more engagement posts. Those ones are the ones that like get people to sorry, to get them to share and save and to converse. I want them to comment. I don't care about likes, to be honest. I really don't really look at likes at all. Like it's just not important to me. Um, when I see that, I know that they're starting to see me as more like of an authority in this, whatever it is the topic is that I'm shifting. So when I'm shifting now from like teaching Time Rich, which is my passive income course, to shifting over to Rich Fun Life, which is more money mindset and easy life mindset, I started posting more on that. I'm not going for sales. I'm building the foundation and the trust for when I do go for sales. So right now I want that. I want that awareness of what I'm doing, right? Positioning myself. Then when I go to actually sell, then I kick up the story posts. Then
No,
I kick up the a little bit more of the value post, but in a different angle. Then I kick up the objection posts and the problem awareness posts, right? And then when I want to shift down again, like let's say I'm going into an area like right now, I'm getting ready to travel. I don't want a ton of people in my Time Rich program just yet. So I'm going to slow that down, slow down the value posts. I'm sorry, the story posts, and I'm going to kick back up with the engagement posts. So it's like I always say it's like looking at it when you're in a helicopter. You know this because you're a helicopter, you fly helicopters. When you look at a helicopter and you see all these dials and all these knobs and all these, everything, you like when you look at your social media or any marketing strategy, you have all these dials that you can do at different times. And most people just they fall into the myth that it's always got to be 80%, a value and education post and 20% promo. And that's rubbish. That's why most entrepreneurs struggle. It's the kiss of death because you're not in control of what you want at the time, what you need. So then you wonder why you're not getting all the growth that you want, you're not getting all the sales you want because you're going for all of it. And it's not to say that you're not going to have all of it happening at once if you once you found the right ratio for you,
right.
but you're going to struggle if you're trying to what usually happens honestly is you go into what was called the friend zone, right? Nobody's buying and you might get some follows, but you're not getting a huge amount of following. They're just saying thank you. Congratulations, that's great. Good job. They're not
Right.
going, lead me, give me the solution, There's
Right.
a very big difference. So you have to understand what works, which dials and stuff work for your business in the era that you are in right now.
Okay, so I just want to dial this in a little bit for some people who might be listening, and I'm going to say this too. I know Heather is always on the podcast; she's always listening. So Heather, I know you're listening, and so if you have some questions about this, please jump in, because if it adds value to this conversation for people and for listeners, it's critical because I think this is where people have this lack of understanding. Many business people out there who have successful businesses, they just don't understand this stuff. And I'll be honest with you, my wife understand, I don't so I'm that person. Like you're like I am the listener literally right now. I feel like I am. So sorry to those of you who know more than I do. My apologies. But it's so when you say growth area, first off, you're talking about growing your social media platform. Like you wherever you are on social media, whatever platform that is, growing the people who see what you do or what you
Right.
offer, what your
Your reach, your
services, what
following.
your
Mhm.
reach, your following. Those are all words that would be used to, like, people say, what's your reach? What are your followers? That's like how many people are you exposing yourself to on your social media platforms, correct? And then so you talked about saves and shares. So shares, I get people sharing your information to others, but saves, what are saves like, and
So
how do
if
you
you
measure
post
those?
something like you post a value post, and I'm not big on doing educational posts. I'm more focused on like insightful posts and in uh, value posts that they're not more educational. There's a thing of like if you do more educational posts, I see that as kind of shortcoming for other people, unless it's a very quick win. But I focus more on insight because one, if you give them too much of the educational piece, you're cutting it short because it's not everything that they need. And this is a big problem. It's one reason that you've got millions upon millions of online entrepreneurs that are struggling is because they're stuck in the early 2 years or maybe even longer, up to 8 years of do it yourself. where they're just piecing things together instead of finding a coach or a mentor that's got a holistic system, right? But they're piecing it together based on these little educational pieces that they see online, and it's not enough to get them the result that they need, right? Not only that, but the pieces that are being shared might not be right for what's in their era of their business, where they're at right now. So when I see things like that, oh my gosh, where am I at here? Like, where was I going with that? I'm going deep into the strategy.
What I'm seeing is you're really kind of explaining the process of um, being careful of what kind of content that you're putting out and what the outcome is towards that content
Right. So we were talking
for
about saves.
your, yeah, and the saves, and for that, like, what, how does that
So
work? So,
I focus more on saves and shares. I always have. I've never focused on like traffic, followers, things like that. I don't care about that. I care about the two bottom lines, right? So one is the conversions, and two, I really do care about the shares,
and the
shares and saves. If somebody
and
saves
the
something,
save is something like they see you and they save it in their in their
right?
inbox type of
So
thing.
yeah, well, so on Facebook, you can hit the save button, right? Assuming it's something they're going to come back and review. On Instagram, it's the same way. On you can also share something. If they share it, you think of I know we were talking about this before. Like, if for you, it might be a nanosecond where you're like, okay, I've got this many saves and this many shares and this many likes. But if you really think about that, that is someone going, wow, that's really good. I need to remember that. I need to come back to that.
Right.
That's huge. And most people take that for granted. But if you really think about the impact on that, that tells you, okay, I need to give them more of this, right? And I need to break it down. Usually, you can take that one post or a carousel or whatever it is, take a piece of it and repeat. And if you pay attention to that and you keep doing that, I save everything into a vault. When I get a good result from something, I take a piece of it and I repost. If it still gets a good result, I save it into a social vault. And it's just a Google Drive snapshot with a little note on the title that says what it was, why I kept it. Eventually, you can have 2 years of content that is powerful content that got the best result for your business, for your following, right? So you want to focus on the shares and the saves. The saves say like, "Wow, this is powerful enough that I want to come back to this." That's massive. If they, I mean, think about it, if you see something that's like, I've already heard that before, they're going to pass. That's not a
Hmm.
signal to you, right? It's a signal to you to not do that again. Don't do that. And if you see something that's been shared, that's a referral. Referrals in business, we know the power of referrals in business. That's massive. That's a vote of this is the person for you.
Ultimate confidence. Yeah.
Yeah. So that person that comes to you, they're probably going to follow. If they've been, somebody shared something with them and they come back and they're probably going to follow you. They've also automatically established this is somebody worth paying attention to. You talk about like, I'm not a big believer in focusing on know, like, and trust. I think it's rubbish. But if you talk about building know, like, and trust, and if you're focused, that's part of your strategy. Then think of how fast that is. If somebody says, I know, like, and trust this person, you need to take a look. Boom,
Yep.
instant. And
Yep.
here you've got people going, this got a lot of likes. Yay. I don't care about likes. Likes are friend zone, right?
Got it.
I
No, and
want shares. I want saves.
this is really important because I think a lot of people do focus on likes. Oh, look how many likes you got on that. But and I love this key piece because, and I want to circle back on it, is like your point about if you see something of content that's getting saved, putting it in a vault, uh, aka storing it in a file and keeping it for later, so that you have a understanding of what it is that they like. But and then it's like when you reverse engineer that from a just from a common sense standpoint, um, to me, it's like, great. If shares and saves, guys, is what you're looking for, please tell me if I'm wrong or right, or I'm on the right track at least. Which is, if shares and saves is what you're looking for, then you ultimately then ask yourself the question, well, what would I have to distribute to others, my potential client or people I want to, you know, potentially bring in, um, what would and this could be on recruiting too, like this could be a really good tool for recruiting, is like, what content would I have to deliver in order to add value to others, to the point where they would want to share it with their friends or their business peers, or save it for potential learning, or review or understanding, or sharing it with the team, internal team, that what content would I have to deliver for them to do that?
And
And then
that's the mindset shift.
yeah.
Because once you start thinking like that, and then you take in some other things as well, where you like understand, okay, the algorithm, I don't really care about algorithm either. I care about followers, what their reaction is. So what if the platform is designed to be sticky and you're creating more of these shares and saves, what else can I do to help the platform keep the people here? Maybe refer to another post of your own.
Hmm.
You start to think like that,
Yeah, yeah.
and
See,
it's so much easier to get more people to make everybody happy. The platform's happy, everybody's happy, right?
so I'm going to put this into layman's terms and tell me if I'm fucking crazy. This is what I think is kind of fucked up in our world. Sorry for the language, guys, but as you were talking about this is exactly what I was thinking about. Was so this is how I relate it. People go to a restaurant, they take a picture of their plate, and they post it on Facebook or wherever they post it, whatever on their whatever the platform they're on. They take this picture, and then everybody sends, oh, like, and they feel like they actually have friends and that they're important. But what they're not doing is adding any fucking value to anybody's life whatsoever. And they end up swirling back to our original
But are
conversation.
they? But they are. But here, you know what
Well,
they're doing is they're adding connection.
okay, but okay,
Yeah,
agreed. But
yeah. But it's friend zone. You're right.
but the alternative is what I would say would be, and I'm totally open to being wrong on this, but because then we trap people, like, yes, there's connection, but they're actually trapping connection into this device here. And then what that does is distress, because we only have so much time, energy, in our brain, right? And focus, so that now I'm focused on my cell phone and who, like, somebody who is taking a picture of a meal, when I'm walking down the street and there's a homeless person and I don't connect with them, or there's somebody who might need the door held open, or I'm in an elevator and instead I'm looking at somebody's picture of a meal and I'm not saying, hey, how are you today? How was your day? Have a wonderful day. Be safe, drive safe, getting out of the Uber. Like, do you tell your Uber driver, drive safe? I really hope, God bless you. Like, whatever your thing is. And then it's like, so, or if instead of taking a picture, it's like, and this is the answer to, like, how would I want somebody to save or share something like this? It's like, you walk out of a restaurant, you had an amazing meal, and you post a picture on a reel or whatever, and you go, hey guys, I just want you to know, I was in New York City and I just had the best service at the greatest restaurant, ate the best food, or had, this great wine, whatever it is. And you post that and people go, oh shit, next time I'm in New York, I'm going to go to that restaurant because I want a recommendation. And then, so to me, like, it's the elevated, like, we post stuff that is somewhat irrelevant to other people's lives, but makes us feel great. But we're really not asking the question, like, how can I help add value through the experience of what I had? Like, does that make sense? I might be completely wrong,
No, I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree.
but I
Every
think
post
is
I put out there is usually ask myself, like, why do they care? Why do they care?
right. What
Is
does
this
this
is
mean
this
to them?
about them or is it about me? Yeah.
Right, right. And I think as a business, guys, that's what if you were embarking on, and what we were really talking about was growing this platform, like getting viewers, but you're going to get that, and you're going to get shares, and you're going to get saves by producing content that is meaningful to them, not listening to radio station WIFM, what's in it for me. And that's so that thank you for that distinction, because I think that we think about, it's the difference between quantity versus quality, right? It's like, Heather, I know you bounced on, and I'm happy for you to jump into this conversation because I know you live in this world as well. And so if you have any questions, please pop on and just interrupt me. Um, so the second next step then is, okay, so if we're growing our base, if you will, people who are seeing us, we're looking for shares and saves. Then on the sales side, if you're trying to gain a client, I guess, is what you're really talking about when you say sales. Is that correct? Yeah. Or you're trying to sell part of your product or sell a course online or sell, something online. You were talking about some things like engagement posts, story posts, and I don't know.
Objection
So
posts.
like an objection post. Yeah, that was the other one. And I'm like, I don't even know what the hell she's
You
talking
know
about.
what it is?
So,
It's here's the easiest way to think of it is think of everything you would put on a sales page.
guys, I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Jeni. Every time we get together with her, it is like we're creating a new textbook on some type of topic. And I don't think this was any different. So we're glad you stayed on. This one was a very long podcast. We're probably going to break it up into 3 sessions. But stay tuned with it next week. Like there's just more content inside our conversation on social media and digital marketing. This is the future, guys. This is a no miss. You are going to take a lot out of these conversations. I know I did. It's phenomenal. So stay tuned for this will be number 2 next week, and then probably number 3 the week after that. So hope you guys love it. Take care. God bless. We'll talk to you soon.